The mess hall buzzed with the usual chatter of boots, trays, and testosterone. The morning drills had ended, and 5 soldiers lounged at the far table, laughing louder than everyone else, their jokes sharp enough to cut through the air. Then she walked in, Elara Quinn. Shorter than most, quiet, her uniform crisp but unassuming. She carried her tray like it was armor. She didn't look anyone in the eye. That, to the soldiers, made her easy prey. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. They started with whispers, mocking her gait, her silence, her small frame. One called her porcelain doll. Another said she didn't belong among real soldiers. By the time she reached an empty table, the laughter behind her had grown louder, crueler. Elara didn't react. She placed her tray down, her fingers steady, her eyes lowered. But deep inside, something old and buried stirred, a part of her that remembered darkness, discipline, and the freezing silence of the Pacific at 3 a.m. The part that once wore a wetsuit and carried out missions no one ever spoke of. She had been trained to ignore provocation, to assess before engaging. But when one of the men, Private Rains, walked over and slapped her tray to the floor, spilling food across her boots, she slowly looked up. And in that instant, something in the room shifted. Her eyes were calm, not angry, just focused. The kind of focus that precedes lightning. Rains chuckled. "What are you going to do, sweetheart? Cry to your sergeant?" Elara stood. The chair legs screeched across the floor. The mess hall went silent. "You really don't want to do this," she said softly. Her voice carried no tremor, only a strange steadiness that unsettled even the ones laughing. But pride is a heavy thing. The soldiers closed in anyway, grinning, forming a semicircle. One muttered, "She thinks she's tough." Then it happened. Elara moved, fast. The first man's wrist twisted before he realized what she'd grabbed. His body hit the floor with a dull thud. She pivoted, elbowed another in the ribs, then swept a leg, sending 2 more sprawling. The final soldier lunged, but she sidestepped, using his own weight to bring him down hard. The entire thing lasted less than 8 seconds. When it was over, 5 men groaned on the floor, staring up at her like they'd seen a ghost. She straightened her uniform, breath steady. "Next time," she said quietly, "don't corner someone you haven't read the file on." And then she walked away. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then came the heavy sound of boots. The commander's. He'd witnessed the whole thing from the doorway. "Lieutenant Quinn," he said. "That's enough." The soldiers scrambled to their feet, stammering explanations, but the commander silenced them with a glare. "You 5, he said coldly, "just picked a fight with a Navy SEAL. Congratulations." The words hit harder than any punch. The entire mess hall froze. Eyes widened. Forks paused midair. A wave of whispers rippled across the room. Elara had been part of SEAL Team 8, a classified operator who'd retired from active combat after an injury. She had saved 12 men on a mission that went wrong, dragging 2 wounded comrades through fire and shrapnel. But that wasn't in the briefing for her current post. She didn't like being recognized for it. She wanted to blend in, to serve quietly, to heal. The commander approached her, his tone softening. "You didn't need to engage, Lieutenant." "I know, sir," she said, voice calm. "But sometimes silence teaches nothing." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Understood." As the soldiers were escorted out, shame replacing their arrogance, the rest of the base watched Elara return to her seat. No one laughed now. No one whispered. The respect in the air was palpable. Earned, not demanded. Later that evening, as the sun bled gold across the hangars, Rains approached her quietly. His ribs were bandaged, his pride shattered. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "Didn't know who you were." Elara smiled faintly. "Doesn't matter who I am. You should treat everyone like they could save your life one day. Because sometimes they already have." He nodded, words failing him. She returned her gaze to the horizon, the sound of drills echoing faintly in the distance. For the first time in months, she felt peace. Not because she'd won, but because she'd reminded them, and herself, what restraint and strength truly meant. Because real power doesn't roar. It whispers. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back. The next time someone seems small, quiet, or unimportant, remember Lieutenant Elara Quinn, the woman they mocked in the mess hall, until they learned who she really was. If this story moved you, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Whispered Words, where every story reminds you that courage often hides in silence.